Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Pumpkin Copter Cast, the only video game show.
Only one. I've
Yes.
heard rumors of others, but
So, I am joined today by author, accessibility advocate, brilliant, gamey, talky woman, and video game butt enthusiast, Laura Kate Dale.
I sure did write a book about video game character butts, and no one stopped me doing that.
And before we get to the meat and taters of this episode, we're gonna play a game I always play at the and at the beginning of every episode, whether my guests like it or not. We're gonna be playing a rousing game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Dark Souls. Because if
I think
there's
I should be pretty good at this. I used to play Yu-Gi-Oh! Semi-competitively once upon a time.
because if there's two things Yu-Gi-Oh! And Dark Souls have in common, it's a truly disturbing amount of cosmic horror and
Oh,
names
that they do.
and names that don't sound like they were invented by any person who's been alive for the past 100 years. So basically, I'm going to list three names, and you're going to guess if it is a Yu-Gi-Oh monster, or a boss from Dark Souls, or Bloodborne, also known as British Dark Souls, or Elden Ring, also known as What If Dark Souls But More. So we will start with hmm. Let's say Royal Rat Authority,
Oh,
Yu-Gi-Oh,
that's
or Dark Souls.
Now see, I've realized the flaw with my confidence in this game is that I will definitely recognize the thing you say, and then I'll go, "Oh fuck, I know both Yu-Gi-Oh and Dark Souls. It could be either that makes me know." I got very excited when I heard Royal Rat Authority. I've definitely heard that before from one of these two franchises. You've revealed the devilishness of this game. I'm gonna trust my first instinct, Yu-Gi-Oh.
Wrong. It is a boss
No,
from Dark Souls
should have.
Numero
Yeah.
2. Let's see. Next.
Yeah. Come on.
See, just
I can pick
have.
this up. I'm warming up. I've got this.
Alright, next is Divine Serpent Apopus, Yu Gi Oh! Or Dark Souls.
Oh, divine. My only worry about saying Yu-Gi-Oh for this is divine is an attribute, and it's an attribute that only shows up on the. I was gonna say it only shows up on the god cards. This could be the. Is this is this the boss monster from the end of the Waking the Dragons arc, which might be a divine? So I'm gonna say Yu-Gi-Oh again. I'm doubling down. It's Yu-Gi-Oh.
You are right. It is a Yu Gi Oh! monster, but
It's not that Waking the Dragons end arc thing,
you're
no.
thinking of the Great Leviathan.
The Great Leviathan. But you see my thinking.
Yes.
I was trying to find something non-god card that might be divine. I didn't know if putting it in the card name was a problem.
Nope, this is a souped up version of a monster that Merrick's servant Odeon used way back in
Ah.
Battle City when there were almost but not quite rules in the anime game. Let's see, last one. Do. Say Old Iron King, Yu-Gi-Oh or Dark Souls.
uh, Dark Souls?
Yes, it is from
Okay.
Dark Souls 2 again. And with that, I have forced another guest to dance to my demented whims.
My big takeaway from this is Royal Rat Authority is 100% the most Yu-Gi-Oh card name a thing not from Yu-Gi-Oh has ever had.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's the perfect. It sounds like an archetype name. It would fit the text box size well. I could see that being in like a magic card description that searches for it. I'm upset at you, Konami, for not inventing the Royal Rat Authority first.
And with that, we bring the opening act to a close and we can move on to the actual reason. I have Laura as a guest today, so Laura, even though you're quite more well known in the internet video gaming space as I am, how about we start things off with an introduction of you?
Cool. I'm Laura. I go by Laura K. Buzz on the internet, and for about a decade now, I have been making a living talking about video games online, in various ways, shapes, or forms. I am one of the hosts of a podcast called Podquisition, which talks about video games and definitely never touches on politics. It's definitely not a very political show.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I have been editor at several gaming sites, including Kotaku UK and Destructoid UK. Um, Freelance left, right, and center about all sorts of different topics in games. But the last 5 years or so, my main thing has been talking about accessibility in games and how we can make video games more accessible for disabled players. I run a series on YouTube and text called Accessibility, where for the last over 5 years now, every week I've talked about beginner and upward topics of how we can make more video games playable by more groups of people.
Okay. And Laura, when did you first discover video games as a entertainment?
So I discovered video games pretty young. I had an older brother who kind of introduced me to video games via his hand-me-down consoles, sort of. Um, I'd have been maybe, I'm gonna say like 4 or 5, and my older brother gave me his hand-me-down Super Nintendo 1 year for my birthday, and then 2 weeks later decided he wanted it back because he wanted to play Mario Kart with his friends and never gave it back to me. So for a glorious 2 weeks, I had Mario Kart, A Link to the Past, and Mario Paint. And apparently giving me video games for 2 weeks and then taking them away really lit a fire inside me to be like, no, this is the only media form I enjoy now. I will make it my life's mission to consume all of them.
Okay, and what would you say was your favorite game and or games growing up?
I was a very Nintendo-oriented person growing up. The two series that I think of when I think of gaming when I was younger are the early Pokemon games on the original Game Boy and The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time on the N64.
Mm-hmm.
I was not great at socializing as a child. I'm autistic, and I really did not know how to people. People were confusing and
Mm-hmm.
complicated, and I didn't know how to interact with them really. But I had a very good brain for holding in lots of stats and figures and numbers and statistics. And I grew up at exactly the right time that like all of my peers were very into Pokemon. So no one necessarily wanted to hang out with me, but I did know what level Charmeleon evolved and how you get a Nidoran to turn into a Nidorino or a Nidoking. And that was useful. And being useful was almost as good as having social skills for a while. And that very much made me deeply appreciate this series about collecting and cataloging every single creature I could and having my very neat, organized, obsessive collection. Um, Zelda, on the other hand, I've always been very drawn to big, grand, story-heavy adventure games. Something of something about the idea of being someone from a seemingly normal background going off on this quest and being able to be useful and maybe you've been underestimated because of your age, but you are capable of more than people know and can go on this big grand quest and be important was pretty enthralling. Um, and those two were, I think, the games that really locked me into loving video games.
Okay, and what would you say is your favorite game and or games now?
Too many. The problem is I play. My job means that I play a bit of everything at this point. Pokemon has really stuck around as a series I've loved consistently, like right through to today. I am an obsessive. I'm a shiny hunter in Pokemon, which for anyone who doesn't know, means every Pokemon in the Pokemon series has a 1 in either 4,000 or 8,000 chance, depending on which game you're playing, of being a different color variant to normal. And I have made it my life's mission to get one of every single 1,000 plus species of Pokemon in their 1 in 4,000 or 1 in 8,000 odds special color variant. And I'm over 90% of the way to doing that. I have
Oh my.
dedicated literal thousands of hours to the Pokemon series, running around in circles, hoping that, like, a Pikachu will be a slightly darker shade of yellow and make a bit of a sparkle. But outside of that, a series I've really grown to love in the last few years is the Yakuza games. Now, I guess now called the Like a Dragon series. They are this really, really enjoyable mix of serious, intense crime drama and the silliest nonsense you've ever seen. And there is no attempt to blend the two. It's just 1 minute you're having very serious arguments about, like, we're gonna cut this guy's fingers off, he won't tell us who owns the vacant lot that's deeply important to everyone. 2 minutes later, it's, we're doing slot car racing, and this is now the most important thing that's ever happened. I hope you invest the next 30 hours into it. And this, like, deeply taking things deeply seriously and then not seriously at all, back to back, I am a real sucker for.
I've recently played through Yakuza 0, and now that series has got its hooks in my brain, so I get it.
It's one of those, once one of them clicks with you, it's like, oh no, there's like 12 of these I'm gonna have to get really into, isn't there? Oh no.
Yes. And now we can move on to the real big meats of this. So this year, like, just as a natural extension of your accessibility series, you are creating, well, coming this June, very soon actually, you'll be doing an accessibility summer showcase. So for the 5 of people who watch my show, what is it?
Sure. So, back in the before times, before video games got all weird, we used to have a thing every summer called E3, where all of the big game companies would do their big, here's our once a year what we're doing with video game trailers for the year ahead. And at this point, that's a lot more nebulous. We still have Summer Games Fest, which is a loose amalgamation of a lot of very small, different showcases like this. But a lot of people just showing, it's the summer, here's video games coming out in the next year. And that the past few years, as someone that cares about accessibility in video games, is how rarely we know about accessibility in video games when they're first announced. During Summer Games Fest or E3 or whatever, you get lots and lots of trailers for lots of games, but disabled gamers are often left to go, that looks cool. I hope 6 to 12 months from now when that comes out, that I'll be able to play it. I don't know whether I can get excited about this cool looking trailer right now, because maybe 6 months from now I'm going to find out that doesn't have any of the accessibility stuff I need to play it. It sort of leaves a lot of disabled people not being able of, that's a cool trailer and I can be confident I'll be able to play it when it comes out. So that's sort of the origin of where the Accessibility Summer Showcase came from. It came from a desire to have one of these showcases during, like, early June, where a bunch of cool trailers would be shown, and disabled gamers, regardless of what kind of disability or mix of disabilities they have, could go, that trailer looked cool, and I know relatively confidently whether I'm going to be able to play that when it comes out or not. So, during its 45 to 50-ish minute runtime, as well as showing off the game, talks about these are the accessibility settings we have available. These are the groups of disabled gamers that we are aiming to be playable by. And also being open about like which groups of disabled gamers their game might not be accessible for. Just being open so that people know that game looks cool, and I know the information I need to know about whether I'm going to get to play it. So yeah, that's the accessibility during its third year. I'm literally in the middle of making the subtitles for it imminently before we started recording this.
Yeah. And yeah. At what point, Laura, did you decide to go from making just your accessibility videos to like at what point did you realize that not only like did you want to make like a much larger presentation, but that you could?
Yeah, the could is I think the interesting question there. So I started Accessibility as a series in 2020, in the start of that year, and I was really pleasantly surprised that first year by how seriously it was taken as a relatively new series.
Mm-hmm.
And when early 2021 was coming around and it had been like a year or so, and I was like, okay, I want to take stock of this series and go, what could I be doing to grow this? Do I have bigger ambitions for what I'd like to do with it? The Summer Showcase was one of the first things I thought about wanting to do. The issue is, I have no background in video game PR or marketing, and as a journalist, I have no background that would tell a game developer it's a smart idea to give me your game and let me be involved in its marketing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that first year, I had a first year where I was like, okay, I'm going to look into whether I can do this. And there's a lot of hurdles that come up when trying to, as a single individual person with no budget, put on an E3 style presentation. Convincing enough developers to take a chance on it was a barrier. Um, Finding enough developers that had accessibility stuff they wanted to talk about or felt comfortable talking about at a time when accessibility was still a fairly new conversation was tricky. Um, Finding the budget for my ambitions, because I wanted to make sure that it was put out in an accessible way, which for me meant I wanted it to be available with, at the very least, American Sign Language, British Sign Language, and audio descriptions, which all cost money to produce. And I didn't want this to be. I know a lot of like Summer Games Fest and similar showcases charge money to developers to be part of them, and I didn't want to do that. I wanted to, if someone had an accessible game, I wanted to give them as few reasons as possible not to get involved. Um, but that meant I'm working with no budget, and I gotta make art assets and all those sort of things. That first year, it was really just lack of developers that were working on accessibility things and felt confident to come forward with them that sort of made it difficult to get off the ground. But in 2022, I was like, okay, I'm going to try this again, and I came back in with a much longer run-up of, like... At that point, I was a couple of years into making videos about accessibility, so I was like, I'm going to start reaching out to companies that I've seen regularly be accessible in their games and proactively go, have you got any games you want to show off? Rather than just doing, like, post on social media, hey, reach out if you've got games. Reaching out to potential sponsors to help cover some of the costs of it, and being unafraid to just like pretend I was a big deal before I was, and hope that worked out. But yeah, it's something that I've wanted to do since within about a year of starting to talk about accessibility, and the 2023 showcase being the first one that happened, going well, really opened a lot of doors of like, oh, this is a serious thing people pay attention to. It got way easier after the first year to make it happen.
Okay. Let's see. And are we, like, anyone watching this and anyone familiar with your stuff, they understand on like a macrocosm level and a larger scale why a presentation like this is important. But if I may, like, surgically focus, why is the accessibility summer showcase important to you specifically?
To me, specifically, it is about creating a space where disabled gamers like myself don't feel like a second thought. Don't feel like we are a, if we get around to it, if you're lucky, we'll think about you. Um, I wanted it to be a space that celebrated there is a whole range of games out there from developers big and small, making the effort to go, being playable by as many people as possible is important. Disabled people's needs aren't a nice luxury to do if you can get around to it.
Mm-hmm.
And where every game felt like I wanted a space where it felt like every game had stopped and gone, what can we do to not exclude people who love games, who could perfectly well play a game with a little, a little assistance. It was about wanting to have a space where accessibility didn't feel like a secretive marketing point being held off until like a couple of days away from launch because, well, that's an extra news marketing beat that we can squeeze out of the publicity cycle, blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
It felt important because I so frequently, as someone that does a lot of like, I'll watch a lot of the Summer Games Fest presentations live with people in Twitch chat. I'll do reaction streams to them over on Twitch. And I have a lot of disabled people in my community with different disabilities who will frequently go, that game seems really cool. I have no idea if it's going to be playable. Even when we're talking about like some of the big companies that publish games, if you look at PlayStation first party published games for the PS5, most of the time there's certain settings you can rely on them doing. You can go, they're probably going to have high contrast mode, they're probably going to have presets for different kinds of disabilities. Probably. You'll then get a game released like Gran Turismo that just doesn't have any of those settings that the last 8 first party PlayStation games did. Even from a company that like has a pretty good track record and you can probably count on, sometimes they'll just release a game that doesn't have those things you've come to rely on, and that can be really disappointing. I know people who got really excited, for example, for Gran Turismo because the previous like 7 or 8 first party PlayStation games had established a pattern they felt they could rely on, and then that pattern didn't continue, and suddenly it's like, oh, I got excited for that game and I just don't get to play it. And seeing that happen over and over the years, I just wanted a place that felt safe to go. It's not a problem if a game's not accessible for me, but tell me early. It's great if a game's accessible for me, let me know so I can get excited about it. And that's what it means to me. It is important to me because it is a space where excitement doesn't have to be curtailed. It doesn't have to come with caveats. It doesn't have to come with the risks of maybe for some reason this will be disappointing later when it shouldn't have been.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, there's a good point. It actually reminds me of, a few months back when fellow trash girl from the Gender Jumpster, Commander fucking Stephanie fucking Sterlingson did a Jimquisition on how Street Fighter 6 was so like accessible because of some new modes and controls that they were able to like play online, just play Street Fighter in general for the first time, and that just amazing feeling.
And that's such a big, wonderful, welcoming feature that like during Summer Games Fest they did not mention once. Like so many games have these really exciting, innovative things that could open up being playable to so many people, and they just don't talk about them. Because like my hope with the Accessibility Summer Showcase is that eventually one day it's not going to need to exist. I would love to get to a point where other showcases, you know, a Capcom showcase or a PlayStation showcase or whatever, took 5 seconds at the end of a trailer to show a settings screen so people could go, oh, I can see whether it has the things I need. Like that little of a thing would be enough that like my showcase wouldn't need to exist if more of the other showcases just took a second to go, oh, we've got this thing, that might be helpful. I'll tell you that it's there, rather than having to wait until it comes out and hope that you stumble upon that information.
Mm-hmm. Let's see, has there been... Well, I mean, obviously, since this is your bread and butter, but are there any, like, accessibility and options in games that, like, currently exist that you're like, you know, why wasn't this a thing before?
There's a few of them that I've been like bugging to make happen that are starting to happen that I'm very excited are finally coming around.
Mm-hmm.
One of the ones that I think is really quite easy if you think about it early in development and like very little cost for a good amount of benefit is accessibility information for autistic players around nonverbal subtext. This could be as simple as a subtitle toggle that you can switch on and off, much like speaker name tags, that is just a one-word description of the tone of voice that a line of voice acting is being delivered with. Or, you know, a one-word description of tone for dialogue choices, so that, like, if you struggle to read a non-verbal tone of voice, you know what tone you're about to deliver a line of text with. This is one that I've been arguing for a while. Like, a lot of the groundwork for this is already being done. We're seeing video games more frequently include audio description for blind players, and a lot of the times the audio description script will include a description of non-verbal subtext for players who can't see the screen. You get descriptions of this character raises their eyebrow in disbelief. Like, that's a description of non-verbal subtext you've already created that you could put in a subtitle for people who struggle to go, oh, that eyebrow raise means the person is being disbelieving. That is one that largely is a matter of subtitle formatting and a small amount of text addition that I think would be a really big beneficial feature I would love to see more of. Beyond that, I'm trying to think of ones that feel overdue. A lot of the stuff that feels overdue is really just basics. The stuff that the industry is almost at the point of standardizing, and everyone sort of knows they should be doing. We just kind of need to get everyone to the point where it's kind of embarrassing if you don't do them. Be that making sure that your subtitles are above a minimum size threshold so that they're actually legible for a good range of people. Making sure that you have remappable controls, having the ability to adapt your field of view, the ability to turn off head bob or head sway in first-person games. All of these things that we've known for many, many years are useful, and we kind of just need to get to a point where it's like, you just kind of need to offer those. Because I feel like there's a lot of ambitious things being done that I would obviously love to see more of. I would love to see more games do implementations of high contrast mode visuals, navigation assistance for sightless blind players. But the basics, we've known for years what the basics are. It would be great to just get to a point where, like, 90% of games were just doing them.
Yeah. I mean, when you mentioned, like, subtitles, like, being able to convey, like, tone, well, I'm reminded of two things. One, I just immediately started thinking of the L-Core from Mass Effect.
Yes, I love the L-Core. They are wonderful.
Yeah, and second, I was reminded, I think either when it was still in the theater or maybe the DVDs, I can't remember, but, like, I remember when the Barbie movie came out, like, not only did they have, like, sign language, like, an ASL interpreter, like, in, like, the corner or something, but someone also pointed out that it's also that like accessibility things like that are not only good just in general, but it's also an opportunity for further jokes, because I remember how um in the ASL screenings of the movie, like Barbie has like an ASL, like a formal hand sign, whereas like
Mm.
Ken, you had to spell his name out manually, just like to further emphasize like the themes of that movie.
That's wonderful. I'm a big fan of
Yeah.
that.
um. Yeah. So, hey, as you know, as your friend and co-host Stephanie Sterling knows, and as just anyone who knows anything, anyone who's like not a bigwig business executive knows that, progress on this sort of thing is slow. But just in your opinion, what do you think would be like the next sort of like general advancement in like accessibilities in games that you think like is like plausible in like the way the gaming is today?
I think there are a few that are very reasonable, and I would expect in the next couple of weeks we will know whether some of these are the case. Nintendo, I have all eyes on right now.
Mm-hmm.
We are recording this a little under 2 weeks before the Switch 2 comes out. Nintendo is positioned to potentially mark a couple of really big moments of standardization, potentially. Nintendo recently agreed to be part of something called the Accessible Games Initiative, which is a collection of a bunch of different game publishers that came together to agree on standards for the names of and requirements for accessibility store tags.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning, if you go on the Xbox or PlayStation store right now, you can see a list of accessibility features on some of the game pages, like directly from the console store, to tell you whether a game's going to be accessible. Nintendo has signed on to this initiative, which gives me hope that we might see these implemented in the eShop on Switch 2 when the Switch 2 releases. If that is the case, this would mark the first time that all three major consoles offer accessibility tag information at the point of purchase in their digital eShops, which I
Mm-hmm.
think would be fantastic. Um, Potentially, we might be on the eve of seeing standardization of accessibility controllers on console launch days, which would be exciting. We have accessibility controllers available currently for the Xbox Series consoles, the PlayStation 5, and the current Nintendo Switch. Um, the Nintendo Switch supports a controller called the Hori Flex. Um, I'm really hoping that that works on the Switch 2 on its launch day. The Xbox Series consoles, when they launched in 2020, were the first time that a console on day one had access to an accessible controller, because that
Mm-hmm.
had been designed previously for the Xbox One and just happened to work on next gen. I'm really hoping we see that with Switch 2, that on its launch day, the current Nintendo accessibility controller works for it right out of the box on day one. That would be fantastic. Um, Outside of that, a slightly more ambitious one that I expect in the next year or two we will see some big budget game tackle is PlayStation is currently getting more ambitious with trying to include audio descriptions of cutscenes in their games.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but these audio descriptions are usually limited to just pre-rendered or you don't have camera control cutscenes, which is great. It means that games like, say, The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered, which already had like navigation assists for sightless blind players, those players could get more of the narrative because visual stuff in the cutscenes is being described to them. That's great.
Mm-hmm.
We don't currently see games trying to do audio descriptions during gameplay. And that can often mean that, like, if someone's playing, for example, The Last of Us Part 2, they might enter an environment that's like, oh, you've entered like a partially submerged underwater subway tunnel. That's important context that's not being communicated to the player. And I think it's very doable. The reason I use The Last of Us as an example here is those games have invisible triggers in the world where it's a pretty linear game. They know you're going to walk over a certain position in world. That triggers an in-world conversation between characters. You could do the same with audio descriptions. If you create like a bottleneck point you know the player's going to walk over, you could trigger a description of the location you have entered, or like some kind of visual description while the player has control of gameplay. I think that like it's very reasonable to do, and we just need to see the first developer in the big budget space try and tackle that step of having audio descriptions while you have control of a character in third person or in 3D control. Um, and I fully believe in the next couple of years someone will attempt it, and it will
Mm-hmm.
probably be a PlayStation game, I would guess. I'd be pleasantly surprised if it was someone else, but yeah, I want to see the hurdle of describing visuals while you have control of the game being something we step into.
Okay. Let's see. Now, this is just a question that just popped, a silly question that just popped up into my head because, like, I guess just because, much like you, one of the hyperfixations in my brain is Pokemon. Not too long ago, like, one of my favorite videos of yours was the video you made about how, like, Ash would definitely be, like, pro-trans, like, healthcare.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so I wanted, so just based on what you know and based on what you know of anime's favorite, definitely not neurotypical son Ash. Do you think I mean, obviously you'd have to like just smack the concept into his head because it's Ash Ketchum. Do you think Ash would be like pro like accessibility and like disabled rights?
Oh, 1,000%. I think off the top of my head, I'm thinking about like Ash has shown compassion for people and Pokemon in positions of needing support because of physical afflictions. Like the first thing I think of off the top of my head is season one, Charmander being left out in the rain by its previous owner, having to hold a leaf over its tail to not have its tail put out by the rain. You know, instantly a lot of empathy for this is a creature whose physical condition is not being cared for by the people around them that should be caring for them. That is abusive. They need to be out of that situation. They need protecting. I think like that immediately tells me like, okay, cool. You have respect for the need to care for people who might not be in a position to care for themselves in that moment. I think Ash has shown a real deliberate care for. I am less obsessed with you reaching your quote unquote full potential and more focused on you do the best that you can do, and that is perfect. That is good enough. Um, we see that in Ash not pressuring his Pokemon to evolve. Like, to me, that suggests not going. You should feel pressured to be more, to be able to do more, to have abilities that you don't have. It's okay that you are you, and I'm not going to hold against you that you are not something else that I wish you were
Mm-hmm.
physically. Which again makes me feel like I can't see that translating into ableism. We also see examples of like Ash having a real disdain for people trying to push people beyond their physical limitations and trying to like at the cost of their own discomfort excessively pushing people. I think again early seasons the trainer who is trying to train their Sandshrew to be stronger at this like circus tent. I
Oh,
forget
I
his name,
remember
but
that.
he's strapped his Sandshrew into like a harness that's like constantly applying pressure to his muscles and is like hurting his Pokemon. And again, it's Ash is instantly looking at that and going, "You are forcing someone to be in pain because you expect something of them physically that they are not capable of. You are trying to push them past their physical limits." Like that to me says Ash would be the first to go, don't force yourself to try and walk if you would be more comfortable using a wheelchair. Like, do not. I'm not gonna go. I saw you stand up once, ambulatory wheelchair user. Now I expect you to stand all the time because I saw you're capable of it. No, he'd be like, that's that's mean and that's cruel to put people through, pain because you're expecting more of them than they have to give.
Mm-hmm.
There's probably a way bunch of better examples, but off the top of my head, those are the things that would make me say I don't see Ash being ableist. I think he would be pro accessibility.
Yeah, I'm just when I think about that, I just imagining like I don't know, just some point I'm going to just find someone and just commission just fan art of like Pokemon just being like I don't know, I'm just imagining like assisted living animals but like they have superpowers and that's just great.
I'm a big fan of that idea. That's lovely.
Yeah, I'm just for some just because it's one of my favorite Pokemon, I'm imagining like an executor of all Pokemon just using its psychic powers to like I don't know, help push a wheelchair.
I a pun has entered my head,
Oh.
and now I'm forced to say it out loud. Um, would someone who is blind potentially need a seeing eye canine?
I mean, maybe. I mean,
It's not a good pun, but it was in my head, and I wasn't going to be able to think of anything if I didn't say it.
yeah.
I'm
And
cursed with puns.
you know the second and last hypothetical. I mean, just again going back because just because you know as of yesterday last year we got was the release date of the remake of Thousand Year Door, and you know people all over the world were just like high fiving me because the American version caught up with some of the other versions, and you know,
Yeah.
Best Girl Vivian was confirmed as trans, and like you both in like your streaming playthrough and just like subsequent posts and like articles posted like how Mario did indeed like go through something that is you know symbolically similar to like the crap that Vivian went through, presumably for a long time, because we know like just an added just something that makes me extra sad is that you know Vivian is at least as old as the titular Thousand Year Door myth, so she's been dealing with that a lot. But you know like Mario knows what it was like because you know his name got like taken away, spirited away style, and he just got turned into just he got cursed to be purple forever.
Yeah, I have maintained is like there are certain characters in video games that like it's debatable how canonical their transness is, and there are some I would fight people about and some that I wouldn't. But Vivian is one that I maintain. Vivian's story in the Thousand Year Door to me does not work unless she is trans.
Hmm.
It is so intrinsically tied to this is a story of the party of heroes recruiting a former villain because as you say, Mario specifically goes through a very trans allegorical experience and sees eye to eye with a former villain. It is I have had my name taken away, but more than that, it's my name has been taken away. No one sees me when they look at me. They see someone else. They do not see the person I am. The distress that it causes to not be seen for who you are and to not be called by your own name is it's a point of connection between these two characters. It's the thing that makes Ian go, maybe I need to split from my sisters. Maybe I need to do what's right. But it's the thing I think that makes Mario willing to go. I will vouch for you to join Team Mario. We've been through something similar. We get each other,
Mm.
and I I maintain that erasing that from the English language narrative for as many years as it was actively weakened that story. I think it is. You can tell the story without it, but it's inherently just a less complex story. It's got
Hmm.
fewer layers to it, and I think that it's a wrong that has been righted. And I'm very glad about that.
Yeah. I mean, like, I feel like it would go without saying, just considering that you know most of the people Mario knows in both in the games are people that are like literally could not be more physically different from him if they tried, because there's different species also. One is a big cloud lady and the other was like a baby made of a sun. But I feel like I just based on that and just what bits of Mario's personality shine through, I feel like Mario would also be like pro accessibility and like pro disabled rights.
For sure. Like, Mario, like, what are the equipable badges in Thousand Year Door if not accessibility aids? Oh, you can jump further than you could before. That sounds like accessibility to me. I don't see Mario being like, no, I don't need those. I'm gonna. No, party members, you're not allowed those badges. No, they're accessibility aids, and we welcome them in this house.
Yeah. So yes, with that, I believe we can bring this particular episode of the Pumpkin Copter Cast to a close. I would like to sincerely thank Laura Kate Dale for joining me and saying some word talks about video games and the upcoming Accessibility Summer Showcase happening. Um,
Uh,
uh,
Friday, June 6th
yep.
at 4 p.m. UK, 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific. Ooh.
So, yes, before we sign off, Laura, is there anything else you would like to shamelessly plug?
Find me at Laura K Buzz wherever people do stuff on the internet. I do too many things. Search Laura K Buzz, you'll find the stuff.
Okay. And if any of the 5 of people watching this enjoyed this video, you can like and subscribe. Hit the little bell icon. If, for some reason you actually enjoy this and want to support it monetarily, you can go to Pumpkin Copter, patreon.com/the Pumpkin Copter Cast, where for as little as $1 a month, you can submit questions for me to use in future interviews. And if you would like to hear slightly more structured and coherent words from me, you can go to wherever you get podcasts and go and look for Gotta Recap 'Em All, where God is a horse, so nothing is off limits, where I and various guests and co-hosts recapping every single episode of the Pokemon anime. The one with the guns? Yes. The one that gave people seizures and genuinely gave me a headache when I watched it? Yes.
I mean, you gotta recap them all.
Yeah. And yeah, if that sounds like your thing, my current co-host, Lamran Mayasha of Manga Mavericks, are currently just, in like the middle of Ash's Johto journey, and boy, do they just get real weird with it there. But until next time, everyone, this has been the Pumpkin Copter Cast, and as I say at the end of every show, have a gourd day, everyone.